We're on,
yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. It's just after 1. We're running a little bit late for our Facebook Live event today. Welcome to the Smart Hub and our HubLive. As you know, we do these every single week with really 2 reasons in mind. Number 1, we want to encourage you to adopt technology and modern best business practice. Are we still good, Court? And modern best business practice to be able to grow your business, grow your team, and ensure that you have more free time. And also, encourage you to start a new venture. And today we're going to look specifically at whether you could, in fact, go global. Now, I'm super excited because I'm here with one of the most phenomenal ladies in Australia, and I say that super sincerely.
That's big.
It is. Honestly, it is big. You are big. In the best sense of the word. So I'm here with Leanne. She is our Queensland Chief Entrepreneur. And Leanne has some big news and a lot of experience to share with us. Thank you so much for coming to the Smart Hub and for agreeing to do this Hub Live. Welcome.
Well, Rockhampton, second time back. I'm super excited to be here. Every time I walk in the door, it feels like an origami shape has just been able to be unfolded and refolded into an entirely different way. So super exciting.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much for coming. We do have a heap of events for the rest of today, and we'll talk about those towards the end of our session. So we would invite you to join us again tonight, where Leanne's going to share some very, very valuable insight. So Leanne, you call yourself a serial entrepreneur. Why is that? Tell us a little bit about your background and your experience.
So someone else called me a serial entrepreneur. In fact, it was when I was in London, and I guess entrepreneurship for me was the norm. It is the career pathway that I chose. Likely because, and the funny joke is, I think I'm unemployable by virtue of the way I think and act and how I sort of problem solve. Doesn't always sit well with a direct line boss and being told what to do, because you often think in a very different way.
Yeah.
I've started a number of businesses, been fortunate enough to see those through in an exit, and now I have Everledger, which began in 2015. And I had to make a public declaration on LinkedIn that with my family, they made me promise this is my last startup. So now that you're all watching, that's now been broadcasted out further than LinkedIn. So
Love it. So Everledger, can you explain a little bit about what it is and what it does? And it uses blockchain technology. So give us just a little bit of insight into what that means.
Yeah, look, a big question for me was, where does it come from? It's a question that's being asked across multi-generations today.
Yeah.
And now even further, the questions are saying, where does it go to after it leaves me, particularly if it's something like plastics and aluminium. So that question is an important question to ask. We have a number of different large companies in the world, whether it be Microsoft and SAP, that have built procurement systems and trading platforms, and we have that enables businesses to trade. But no one had built a platform of provenance, the ability to know where things come from.
Yes.
And the one industry we began in, just as Amazon starts with books, we started with diamonds. So how could we enable a platform to engage with the entirety of industry across the entire globe to be able to do the traceability of diamonds from the source of the mine right the way through to the retail network. So when a customer walks in the store, it's no longer just about the brand of the store and maybe that brand's 150 or 200 years old. That trust has to reside within an object that can speak of its own journey, and so we created that.
That's incredible. I love what you say. It's like Amazon starting with books. So you're kind of hinting at the future of Everledger. You're creating a platform that can be applied to food, to any industry really. And is that where you're thinking? Like, what's the longer?
Yes. So at the moment, Everledger's focused in gems, metals, and minerals.
Yes.
And so diamonds, emeralds, rubies, sapphires. We've also done a fair bit of work, and particularly more recently in the traceability of wine, because as you start to interact internationally, there are issues with counterfeit goods. There are issues, of course, in fraudulent related activities. And so our platform helps to build a rails of trade that is ethical and digital and has the ability to answer the question, where does it come from?
Yeah, love that. Love your work. So one of the things that most impresses me about you is that you are so well traveled and you have such a broad global view, and you have so much knowledge about different industries, businesses, business models, and also you're able to bring it back to where we are regionally and locally and go, okay, so here's where you are, and here's kind of where you could be if you just implemented a few strategies or took a few actions. So what my question is this: you mentioned in the meeting we were just before that the internet is now the biggest economic enabler, right? So
Correct.
essentially, we have the internet in Rockhampton and in our region. So am I right in saying that we have what we need to be able to build really great global businesses starting here in our region? And if that's the case, can you tell us a little bit about what the story looks like and what the journey looks like to be able to start a new business, or if you're an existing business, spin out an idea and take that to the globe, to the international market?
There's a number of things that are playing out now. There's no shortage of ideas, and everyone wants to be able to solve challenges, and ever more so now in the regions where those challenges are felt and heard and are lived through tragedies, whether that be global events that are hitting the shores. Technologies as we know it now are also transforming, and not just in terms of its technical discipline, but how it's being born of people's use. So we're moving towards a set of technologies that are people's technologies. And the internet, as we know it, is the fundamental economic instrument.
Yeah.
We're in probably the third generation of the web now, if you think about how it's transforming not only the sharing of information, but communications and trade globally.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is technologies that are deliberately being born in an open construct, white papers being deliberately put in place where the inventors of those technologies are confidential. They deliberately don't want to be the front face. And Satoshi Nakamoto and the white paper around Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchain being the engine that of course sits beneath that, is a prime example of one of those increasingly powerful and exponential technologies. What's really exciting is not only the fact that each of these technologies, whether it be drone and robotics and AI and machine vision, are all super powerful in their own right. They're converging. We're starting to get the evolution of trust-enabled mechanisms that we're both now questioning the types of data on the web. So fake news being an example. What tools, what technology can we merge together to bring a better trust level, both digitally and physically? Then we talk about AR and VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, where we're blurring the lines between the physical realities and the digital realities.
Yeah.
Hugely exciting time. Yeah. I remember, and I've been, my career now has been since mid-90s, so 1995, and I've seen many waves of technologies in that time. And I recall only ever being able to learn through the traditional constructs of going to university.
Yes.
That's not necessarily how we learn today.
Yeah.
Technologies and the access to the internet and Google, besides a Google Doctor, I don't subscribe to Google Doctoring, by the way, so please go to hospitals. But you are able to learn an incredible amount of information accessible on the keyboard. Being able to gain access to leading edge professors and universities through Udacity and other organisations in the world.
It's incredible.
So now it's more about the powerful commitment of the mind towards realising your dream, and someone said to me once, dreams don't have expiry dates. So if it's really something that's passionate, then you have the commitment, the tools, the people will all gravitate around you.
Love that. Hey, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on our Facebook HubLive event today. Today is amazing because we have the incredible Chief Entrepreneur, Queensland Chief Entrepreneur, Leanne Kemp with us, and she is a serial entrepreneur. She is well-travelled. She brings so much insight and experience to the couch today. Please hop on and ask a question. Any question about business, any question about technology, any business about how to move your business forward. We would love for Leanne to answer those questions for us. And if you're watching and not interacting, we don't know that you're there. Please give us a thumbs up or just say hi and ask a question if you have one.
Come on, Matt, don't be shy. I know you've got a burning question.
Love it. Okay, so Leanne, basically what you're saying is if you have a dream, even if you've been dreaming it for a long time, have a go. Because if you feel like you don't know what to do, you can just go to Google, go to Udacity, go to YouTube if you have to, and learn what you need to do to take the next step.
Or come to the Smart Hub, where you've got other innovators and entrepreneurs and environments like this. This building is incredible to be able to bump in. And innovation collision also happens in certain ways as well. So we now have environments that will enable innovative thinking, and creative spaces are here. There's a commitment to that, not just only across Queensland, but in the world.
Oh, love it. Hey, Daniel. Hey, Nadia. Thank you for popping in today. Please ask a question for our chief entrepreneur that's who's on the couch with me. Okay, yes, the Smart Hub is a great, great place, and we use the word ecosystem just to mean community of people who are all focused on building business and innovating, creating new things, new value in the world, and it is a great space to link into. So, Leanne, I want to jump to this, and then I want to zoom in and then zoom back out, if that's okay.
Can I phone a friend? Can I buy a vowel? Like, is this...
So everyone who's been following our Hub Lives would be very familiar with the structure. Essentially, it's just a bit of a system on all the little things that are required to build a business, whether that's a local one or whether that's an international business. And what we've been doing is I've been interviewing different people on all of these. So we've been talking about marketing and how to do digital marketing and how to do sales and so forth. So what I'd love to do, if I may, is to ask you to speak with us about what you think the most important thing is around, you know, what do you do to draw your market in? How can you turn that lead into a customer? How can you deliver your product and service? What do you do in the finance management? What do you do? How do you set up the systems? How do you recruit the team and manage the team to run the engine of the business? And how do you set the direction? And what kind of leadership do you bring to business to make it all happen? Is that okay? That's a huge ask.
I definitely need to buy a vowel, phone a friend. Googling might help me in some respects, but we'll give it a shot. I don't see things like this, to be honest with you.
How do you see them?
In a very different way. I see things in concentric circles.
Yes.
You know, clustering, and even the way that we now try and govern in org charts with the CEO at the top, and, you know, the structure of hierarchy is a construct that was born in the Industrial Revolution days. You know, we needed to look towards the boss, but there are great companies that have been built in the world, Spotify being one of them. And we hear these phrases like being agile and systems leadership, but we think about things in small enabled teams where hierarchy is not looked to in a structure of a pyramid. In fact, if anything, Everledge has sort of flipped up the other way, in that most of the power and the engine and the delivery mechanisms are sitting sort of at the wider band of the organisation. And it's really, when you talk about the concentric circles that exist in a company, you know, the clustering of marketing, the clustering in product and delivery, and then the CEO somewhat sits not actually at the top, but in the middle of most of those concentric circles. Yeah. This year, in, again, LinkedIn, I put an announcement out on the 1st of January to the entire team. As the CEO and the founder of Everledger, my responsibility is born far and wide. We have 5 operational centres in the world, 90 Everlegends today. We have about 20 people that we're recruiting for in various parts of our offices. But I made a very clear message to the team that I'm changing my title for this year particularly, and it's C3PO. So people, product, and performance. You know, these 3 very key strategic horizoning that is important to be able to corral behind, not just the vision. The vision is very clear. You know, we want to build a platform of provenance to enable traceability of some of the most opaque, conflicted supply chains in the world, where fraud or black markets exist. And if I was to ask you that question, you would probably come back with diamonds and maybe a number of other types of materials or objects. So the vision is, yes, the responsibility of the founder and the CEO, but to ensure that that vision is not lost through Chinese whispers or is not diluted through hierarchical structures is where we just have to really rethink the paradigm of operations.
Love that. Okay, so how do we do that, and how have you done that? You're speaking about clustering marketing and clustering delivery. How do you actually go about recruiting for your business? How do you go about getting more customers through the door? How do you go about developing the platform? What are some of the how-tos that we can then translate into our businesses here in region to take our businesses to the next level?
So I don't see that Everledger sells to our customers. That's certainly not what we do. We're not out spruiking and knocking on doors like the old encyclopedia salesperson. If I was to present as an encyclopedia salesperson, not here's an encyclopedia and isn't this fantastic and it's the knowledge book, but rather to understand the knowledge that my customer seeks, then of course the conversation turns from selling to them to actually that customer desiring what you have. So we understood very early that there are significant challenges in conflicted and opaque supply chains, that a number of those challenges are well researched and well thought out, and that industry is seeking solutions. So we purely sit there at the right time, the time to understand when to engage with the customer. So the answer to that, all of those things, sales, marketing, delivery, money, systems, leadership. And when someone asks me, what is the most important thing from a startup or an entrepreneur's perspective, it's not necessarily the funding or the team that you build. It's one thing. It's understanding the timing. You could build the very best stack of technologies and bring it together and be world leading. But if it's not happening at the right time, where an industry is solving for a real challenge and a problem, it will sit there, create dust, and another technology will likely eclipse it. Same too with funding. If I raised money too early, I would have spent it in different ways and would not have preserved as much capital value within the organisation as what we have today. So I would actually talk about, how do you think about timing? What are the signals that the market gives you? What's the signals when technology is breaking out of those, the Gantt charts that talk about the hype curves? How do you know those things? And someone asked me a question the other day, is there a difference between scaling up and scaling out? And most definitely there is. But when do you know you're ready to scale up? And it's when the conversation changes. When the customers are no longer seeking the curiosity around what you're building. And in 2014, blockchain, of course, was hidden in a white paper. No one really knew or understood or could decouple it from the cryptocurrency. But now we've had thought leaders, the CEO of Tiffany's, make declarations about the origin of diamonds being available in their stores, commitments by De Beers globally in blockchain technology. The conversation's changing. So when that conversation changes, you want to be there at the right time. Now, of course, we were so early and we educated part of the industry around how important these technologies were. But the internet as we know it today, and I go back to what my earlier statement was, the World Wide Web. We're moving from the World Wide Web to the World Wide Ledger. And it just so happens that the diamond industry is now understanding the importance of the fact that the operating system of the world is starting to move. And how can they be a part of that journey? But not only be a part of it, what is it that the special sources that exist in these technologies, what could be of use back into their own businesses, into the global trade volumes themselves? And that's why they adopted, I guess.
Well, absolutely. So I absolutely love what you're saying. And I just want to say hello to Lisa, Michael, John, Dave, Dwight. Thank you for joining us on our HubLive today. I'm here with Leanne Kemp. She's Queensland's Chief Entrepreneur. And we're at the point where we're talking about timing. So how do you know that the time is right? I think if you start thinking about timing, it's probably a bit of an art and a science. And knowing when there's an opportunity. So you said one thing you have mentioned is when the conversation starts to change. So what do we do as regional entrepreneurs to start thinking about timing and where our business is going and what products or what to do next, essentially? What's the next best right move for us to make?
So for me, the timing was uncovered through reading extensive research, industry research, understanding the constructs of the technology with blockchain, looking at what was happening in the powerful reconstruction of machine vision, as we have smartphones now with processors that are greater than the speeds of desktop computers, and that the quality of the camera on those machines are now getting to sort of optical and digital lenses that gives you microscopic views. How can that technology be able to be used to identify an object? The industry, the diamond industry, is 500 years in the making. So if they have not recorded, industry economics around 500 years of trade, every industry has regional and global and domestic trends. And I remember watching The Big Short, you know, The Big Short that came out with the global financial crisis. And if anyone has watched that movie, there was a scene where there was one or two people in this room that literally took piles and piles of paper, transcended it into Excel spreadsheets, and all they saw was patterns. They saw the patterning of what was happening and said, this is going to happen. This is not a matter of if, but it's when. And the attribution of the timing, of course, is highly complicated, which is why it's both an art and a skill. But data gives you the insights that are needed. And the more data that you have the ability to be able to see and view, sometimes the history of data provides insights into the potential of what could change into the future. It's giving you some type of idealism into baselining better than a guesstimate into an estimate.
Okay, love that. So you said research. How did you choose the diamond industry? Did you go into doing your research with any specific industry in mind? Did you have an inkling of the problem? Or did you just start by just reading broadly and widely? Did you just Google and just keep up with the news? What did you read? How did you go about gathering data or information so that you can come to an insight that will lead you to a global business?
So there were many different perspectives. It was nearly like a series of Rubik's cubes that became unscrambled and then reforming them back into what is Everledger today. So as I started to understand deeply what blockchain was, it wasn't necessarily brand new technologies. Rather, it was constructed by existing disciplines of technologies put together in a novel way. That data, that business network enablement piece that's distributed, enabled the transfer of value that was used in cryptocurrency with money and digital money. So for me, I thought about what is also significantly valuable that needs the preservation where provenance plays out to prove authenticity and value over time. That is unique by its very nature. And diamonds are it. Diamonds are probably the smallest store of physical value across the world. They're transcending borders on daily basis. You're able to trade them, across many other countries in the world. Yet there was no registry of authenticity, no registry of ownership. And of course, on the backdrop of that, you started to then see where the challenges were in the diamond industry. Whether that be man-made diamonds are now being created and baked, in laboratories around the world, where the identity of a natural stone and a man-made diamond is not able to be seen easily by a trained gemologist. So technologies such as machine vision, resonant ultrasound, scanning technologies are super important. So how do you create something that's a version of the truth globally and accepted? We've then got the rise of IoT and the connections of man and machine. So for me, it was really looking at it from a number of different sides of the Rubik's Cube. I always think about it like a kaleidoscope view. What would be the coloured beads that I look at in my kaleidoscope? And if I look at it only in one dimension, I see a certain picture. But it's the same beads. The industry player, the technology and the power of the technology and the timing of the rise of that technology and the skill sets available. I turn it this way. What is it that I can see in that view? Still using the same sets of people, sequencing technologies, industry, and you start to be able to solve different challenges within one industry. So I likened it to the same strategy that Bezos used when he started Amazon. It was books. Like, why books? Why did he choose books? They could be catalogued. You had the ability to bring yourself into a niche market. He just chose a bloody big niche, and so did we. He was seeing, the decoupling of bricks and mortar and online commerce. He was able to easily put in routing and distribution systems. It was a global knowledge bank that people were seeking. So from there, he handled the physicality of the books, and now, of course, Kindle is born, and all of a sudden you have, digital learning.
Absolutely. Hello, Jolene. Hello, Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us. please jump on and ask a question. We have Leanne here with us, Queensland's Chief Entrepreneur. Any question about timing, about building business, anything interesting that you'd like to know around technology? What other questions can we encourage to ask, Leanne? What question would you like to be asked?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I'm pretty open to any question, within reason, of course. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many different questions that come across my table on a daily basis. But I guess, one big burning question has always been in the regions, why would innovation survive and thrive here? And the reality is, why does Everledger, and why did it become a global company from day one? And it's because we went to where the problems existed. We are in sub-Saharan Africa and Botswana and Kenya and Namibia. We are in the trading hubs and centres of the world in Dubai and India, where the diamond cutters are in Surat, a rural regional town. There's something about solving for a problem when you can touch, feel, and have lived examples of it.
Yeah.
And rural regional Queensland has immediate access to those challenges, whether that be looking at agriculture with farming lands that are vast. There's so many different technologies that are mature from previous generations of technologies that could be combined with the new and emerging technologies of today. Just like we spoke about this morning, LiDAR technology and the ability to bring that out from behind the technology that police use just to be able to speed gun you. You can start to reapply that in vast environments in agriculture and, even within rural cities and towns like Rockhampton, to think about the quality of the roads and how do we know when potholes suddenly appear. There's very different ways to be able to think about it. So you also have an unconscious bias here in rural regional town, which is a great thing to have. Not many people would suspect that you could build a global business from a rural regional town. Not many people would have thought that Everledger was born out of Brisbane when I invented the first blueprint for the company in my train. I live in a train on a 40-acre property that, of course, doesn't have the fastest internet speeds in the world, but that didn't stop me. And there's something about being able to do that. It's a way to be able to hide away until you're ready. The timing question yet again.
Okay, so tell us about that. You mentioned that you live in a train last time you were here, and we were intrigued by that. So can you take us back to that moment where you had the insight where technology and problem converged, and you wrote a blueprint? What did that blueprint contain? And can you take us back to where you were sitting and what that was like, the thoughts, the feelings, and the research that all came together in that moment?
Well, the first part was not necessarily looking at it from the construct of the diamond industry. It was seeing the rise of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. It was looking at meetup groups that were happening not only in Brisbane but across the world. It was seeing that Bitcoin had a promise and a currency layer. It was understanding that. So just unpicking that, Google searching, looking at it, talking with people in meetup groups, connecting across chat channels.
Yeah.
That whole sequencing, that if you've come from a technical background like I have, that's just it's a normal connection mechanism globally. It's also thinking and looking at it, who in universities around the world are embracing these technologies or are looking at these technologies with more seriousness. And when you start to see, Stanford and Harvard and, even the Turing Institute taking this technology seriously, that there's some early stage promise that it will survive beyond just a white paper. I took a backpack and went to London, and it was sort of the time in London that really, for me, crystallised where the technology was going to break through. So, seeing large banks, Barclays and HSBC and Santander employing entire floors of cryptographers. And they weren't looking at just cyber security. They were seriously thinking and understanding, what does this technology really mean? Because it changes not only just money across the world, it changes the entire way we kind of rewire trust. And then, again, the blueprint was kind of on a series of napkins and scraps of paper and bits and pieces of notes. And it's not until you sort of put them in a space on a wall, is what I did, and then stood back from it, the patterns began to appear. And then, of course, Everledger began from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're almost like a detective in a way.
Yeah, sometimes I liken myself to a serial killer. You know, those really scary ones where someone locks themselves in a weird room and there's pins and string and stuff. Yeah, that was me.
That's interesting. Mari, thank you for joining us today. Love that you're on this HubLive with us. Please, guys, jump in and ask a question. If you have a question for Leanne, we would love to answer your question today. Okay, so once Everledger was born, what did you do next, and when did you start thinking about raising capital? And talk us through that journey.
Look, I knew that the technology was just so early. So the very early pioneers of the internet, we saw companies that survived when they understood the right time. There's time to educate, there's time to incubate, there's time to accelerate. And for the very first 12 to 18 months, when you're facing off in an industry that's 500 years in the making, that typically those large players are still the predominant players today. They have a complete grasp on that industry. You have to spend a significant amount of time connecting with the industry to understand the trueness of the challenge, to be in a place of the learnings, because you're asking them at some point in time with disruptive technologies to unlearn, to relearn. And if you were just to come in and say, you need to completely change the way you trade, this is going to change the entirety of the opaque market, it wouldn't have gone past a dismissal of don't come back.
Yeah, exactly.
If you take the humbleness of education and understand that, you can then pace the organisation. And we were the first in the market, the first to scale. And now we've seen the industry completely take off. And not just only the diamond industry, but many others, whether it be traceability of food or any other questions. When was the right time to fundraise? Well, firstly, when you desperately need money or you run out of money, that's often a good indication. I did not employ anyone in Everledger till well after the first 12 months. So the first 12 months was only me. And I was asked a series of questions about that. And what was interesting to me, when I answered it in the trueness of my thoughts, the response from some of the investors was I'd never considered it that way. And my answer was I'm running around the world. I'm connecting with every single potential customer at that stage, all of the best cryptographers and PhDs and scientists and universities, crazy inventors that are touching this technology, because I'm doing my own due diligence. I want to know that the timing of this challenge is true. I want to know and be and meet and understand every single one of my potential customers, not only to engage with them so that they gain some trust and confidence, but when I employ the first salesperson, when I employ my CTO, when I employ the CFO, I'm coming from a sense of knowing and understanding. Now, I have had a lot of experience in very different paradigms of business, so I guess I have had a patchwork of quilt of experience. So I do know how to cut code, I know how to run a branding strategy session, I know how to enter, know how to raise money, know how to exit. So that purely enables me to be able to make the right constructive decisions at the right time. The first person I employed is still with the company today. My COO is still with the company today. So because I was increasingly diligent around who I needed, when, why, and how, and I could have a very sensible conversation with them with a wholeness of thought about what actually needed to be done for them to then underpin an entire operating module within the organisation.
You know, I made a big statement earlier, and that's that I think that you're one of the best entrepreneurs in Australia, and I think this is partly the reason why you came into this knowing what was going on, and you did your homework thoroughly. You didn't have a hunch. You knew for sure, and you could not only see the future, but you created the future. And that is incredibly impressive. So in raising funds is something that you mentioned when you have to do that when you run out of money. How long does it actually take to like, if we're as a company, if you're developing this great technology, you have this great insight, and you can tell that your runway is 6 months long. Is now the right time to do something? Or
Absolutely. I mean, you can't expect to meet an investor and that afternoon have them say, yes, great, we'll sign. And even if that was to be the case and you are issued a term sheet, the term sheets are very different to the closing documents. So there's always this huge lag in time. we just finished our Series A fundraising round, and the closing investor in that round, I knew 3.5 years ago that I wanted that company to be my investor. And I have been working, talking, walking with that company for the better part of 3.5 years. So watch this space in September, because that name is going to come out.
We're intrigued.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
It's a $22 million round, so pretty significant. It's Series A, and we closed that out a number of months ago. The reason why we're not disclosing it today is because we're releasing not only the investment, but also a product that we're releasing into market. So pretty exciting, nerve-wracking, actually, to be honest with you, because it places us into a huge market in the world that is highly complex. So, angel investing is super important for early stage ventures, because not only it's seen to be smart capital, particularly if you can get the right type of angel investor that truly understands you as a founder, but also understands the industry or the technology that you're embarking upon. So angel investing, I think, is a really important early stage part, and you can typically close those funds in a far quicker way, because you're not having to explain in a wider aperture of what that business is, right? And you're also typically a team of single or multiple founders at that stage. Moving into venture capital or strategic capital, they're two very different things, again, is not for the light-hearted, and I certainly think you should be thinking about raising and engaging and being disciplined in the conversations well beyond 6 months out. And typically, if you want to raise capital, don't raise capital that takes you beyond 2 years, because it's likely, if you're building a business well and it's scaling and you have customer product fit as well as product market fit, they're two different things, then the valuation of the company is going to leap out. And so therefore, it's all a timing of cash needs versus valuation and preserved value for the founders and shareholders as well. So it's a triangle you've got to balance.
Again, I'm so impressed by how deliberate you were in understanding who you wanted as your investment partner, and then walking that journey and creating those relationships long before you actually wanted the investment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time we had like 6 days of cash in the business.
Wow.
So this hasn't always been like it's all roses and smelling and we go skip down the road. No. There was a time about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, where we had 6 days of cash left.
What did you do when you had 6 days of cash left? How did you manage? How did you get out of the situation?
I mean, I knew that there was ongoing conversations. We were in contemplation of investment and term sheets, and everything was coming to a crescendo, one could say. What did I do? I faced every day like a new day, and I made sure that I got to sleep each night, because you can't think with a clarity of mind unless you can reset every morning. So don't let the stresses of yesterday compound into tomorrow. It's probably the one thing I've learned over 20 odd years being an entrepreneur. So try and every day, not Groundhog Day, because if you repeat the same mistakes of yesterday, that's not the right approach, but certainly coming in with a fresh mind enables you to be able to think a lot more clearly, probably act with a lot more intention without getting sort of the heightened stress concerns. So, sleep as much as you can.
Okay. Can I ask, that's a nice segue into how do you balance looking after yourself and your family and building this global business as well as being the chief entrepreneur?
Well, I think I did a pretty good job, but more recently my goldfish died because I don't think I fed him. So that's a bit tragic.
There's a casualty. Oh dear.
And I'm not sure it's because I didn't feed her, or maybe it's because I didn't get to change the water. But in any event, so that's probably the biggest tragedy of my entrepreneurial journey. No. I think, finding a sense of balance doesn't mean 50-50 to me.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't always have to be work 40 hours, spend 40 hours with the family, fine. So there'll be different times that different parts of your life call upon you for pressing moments. And to have a recognition of that is one thing. And secondly, to ensure that you align with the true purpose of connection and sensibility around what's important. So what's important for the business in Everledger now is different to what was important 12 months ago and what will be important in 12 months' time. The same too in certain aspects of my family life, you know. So my niece is 10. She's going through an increasingly difficult time at school at the moment. So I'm spending more amplified time, you know, with family. Stepdaughter's 19. She's away overseas. She's completely out of the picture and enjoying life and in a gap year, and so be it, and so great.
As she
fantastic,
should be.
and as she should be.
Yeah.
So it's being able to identify those balances and come up with something. I guess the one thing is to not take it for granted that those that are in your circle can know that and understand that through osmosis. There's nothing better than being able to connect, communicate, have a conversation about the why. And then everyone around us gets to appreciate what's important for each other and what's important for the business and what's important for, for the vision that they hold for themselves and as a collective as well.
Perfect. So there's a question. Dwight, how did Rocky get a smart hub and going in on a regional area? So how did we get a smart hub? I'll give you a very, very short history. In 2016, Rockhampton Regional Council adopted a digital readiness strategy, and we had 32 actions in that strategy. The strategy was called the Smart Way Forward strategy, and one of those actions said establish a smart hub. And so we've worked over the last 3 years to establish an actual space, which is the beautiful building we're in, Customs House. It's absolutely gorgeous. We had some funding from Building Our Regions Fund, and we did a fit out at the bottom of Customs House. We have co-working, and really we've spent the last 3 years building an ecosystem and building all the elements into the Smart Hub of what you need for business to thrive. One of the challenges that we have at the Smart Hub is we serve a very broad business community. So we do have small to medium enterprises in Rocky that we're encouraging to adopt technology and to broaden their horizons and adopt some. And a lot of what we do in the HubLive is speaking directly to that audience. But we also have the dream of establishing some startups, which is what Leanne is really talking about today, here in the region. And I have a dream, a personal dream, to show that it's possible from being in this region.
Totally.
And how we can do that. So the Smart Hub then is executing an actual, very structured strategy to enable the Smart Hub to become a place where you can access everything that you need to succeed, including capital. You spoke about Angel. We have our Angel meeting here tonight. We have a Rockhampton Angel group. We do pitch training. We have funded programs. We have youth entrepreneur programs, we have memberships, co-working spaces, beautiful internet, etc., etc., etc. So if you want more information, please send us your email address and we'll definitely be able to share some more detailed information about what we do and how we do that here.
What I love, we had the Mayor in the room this morning and there were many of the government leaders that came in from the vast regions today. And the Mayor said something really quite profound to me, and that is Customs House, no doubt, in Rockhampton, this is the predominant space for commercial businesses, and to put the Smart Hub as the primary precinct in such a high threshold building sends a huge signal to Rockhampton and its regional centres. It means that there's a true understanding that being smart and doing smart business in Rockhampton is a deliberate strategy connected not only by the Mayor but by everyone, all the thought leaders. So it's pretty profound commitment that's been made. Absolutely,
and I have to acknowledge Mayor Strillo because it is under her vision and leadership that this was established and our digital readiness strategy was adopted. Yeah, it's really good. And we love working here. We have beautiful view onto the river. You mentioned that you enjoyed working out the front here this
I'm going to post an Instagram video a little bit later, but this morning I was out with my laptop and I sat next to the river this morning and I literally opened my laptop and all of a sudden Wi-Fi was connected, the sun was shining, I saw yachts on the river and I was like, now this is the place to be.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Actually, do we have a photo of outside court that we can post? We might post something on the feed, on the comments, so that you can see how beautiful it is just like 3 meters that way.
Incredible.
And the weather is absolutely perfect at this time of year in Rocky. Leanne, in terms of getting back to building a startup, building something that is global and scalable, leading a business that is in 5 countries?
Yeah, 5 operational centres.
5 operational centres. How do you keep track of everyone and everything that's going on?
Well, I guess there's digital tools like Slack, and of course we use actually a lot of video internally to be able to amplify and re-amplify and share messaging. I think of Everledger like a relay race. You know, today we're in the Australia time zone. By about 4 o'clock this afternoon, my London office will start to wake. We have Israel and India fast clustering behind that time zone. They will run directly into the night till around 3 o'clock in the morning, Australia time. And then, of course, the US office will open around, midnight or so, and they'll run into the early mornings and the mid-afternoon of the Australia time clock. So 5 time zone centres. The perfection of us being able to do a baton changeover at the end of each day. We do daily stand-ups, we have Scrum Masters, the Agile process, all of those great buzzwords are just now driven within the rhythm of the organisation. But look, I must say, the diamond industry and global trade is a global business in its own right. We sector parts of our organisation. We cluster our technology team in 2 of those locations. We have sales and business development in all 5. Our R&D centre is based in Brisbane and in the Sunshine Coast. So we try and cluster as much as we can together so that we have a strength, our centres of excellence within Everledger that we can call upon. What's most challenging beyond the time zone, because it's difficult, because unfortunately we're all humans, we actually do need to sleep, which is a shame some days, is the appreciation of the culture that sits across people who speak many different languages. They have very different cultural beliefs, cultural backgrounds. The diversity in the organisation I find to be one of our greatest strengths. And not just a great strength internally because of our culture, but our ability to negotiate commercially globally. So we work with Russia, China, the US, as well as India, and some of the biggest luxury brands in Milan and Paris and Geneva. Now, the ability to bring purest Russian-speaking counterparts to the table with those aged, incredibly powerful luxury goods brands, and being able to translate and ensure that we have a harmonised dialogue is probably one of our greatest strengths for a company so small.
Wow, it's super impressive. So essentially more than a 24-hour-a-day operation, really, with all those time zones.
Yeah, someone said to me once, you really know that you're hitting your straps when you're making money as you sleep.
Yeah, and that's certainly happening. And you mentioned before that you're opening your first office in China.
In China. Very, very exciting and nerve-wracking. Just tell me, nerve-wracking.
Okay, so I think it's time to wrap this up. So I'd really like to wrap up with a couple of questions around your role as Chief Entrepreneur. We have some exciting news, which would you share your very exciting news with us here today? It's not quite breaking news, but it's pretty close, right?
Yeah, it was breaking as of yesterday. So the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur is a 12-month tenure that's an honorary appoint, which means it's by volunteer position, and the role has been officially extended. So you get me for another year until the end of 2020. The question from my mind is, did they extend it because I need more time to do stuff, or is it that we're doing
the value
really...
you bring. It's because you're doing great work. You're doing phenomenal work, and I know personally our Central Queensland ecosystem definitely really appreciates all of the work you do, and we love that you travel, and we love that you're so global, and we love that you're in the midst of building a startup right now, so you bring very current information to the table, which is awesome. And then finally, people can come along to the Smart Hub tonight to see you in person.
Totally. Come on, what are you doing sitting on the couch? Get up, get in here and connect.
5:30 this afternoon, it's all happening. We can still register, Courtney? Yes, awesome. There's in the link, in the comments, you can register via the link. There's some catering and some beverages available this afternoon, as well as you can see Leanne speak about product market fit and customer market fit, customer product fit.
Customer product fit and product market, yeah.
And are we talking about scaling as well?
Sure, let's do that.
And there'll be heaps of opportunity to ask questions for Leanne, and also I think to maybe have photos, if that's okay with you.
Mate, I've got a face for radio, so let's just stick to that.
See how we go. So please hop on the link below and just register that you're attending. We really, really would love to see you here at the Smart Hub, 208 Key Street, Customs House. tonight at 5:30. Just follow the signage out the building. If you come down Key Street, find Customs House and just follow the signage. Come up the stairs and you'll find us upstairs tonight.
And Dwight, I see that you're in Brisbane, so I reckon if you jump out into the river at Murray and start swimming, you'd probably make it just in time for tomorrow morning breakfast.
Jump on a plane rather. That'll get you here at 5:30, which is when you need to be here to see Leanne. Leanne, any parting words of wisdom before we wrap this up?
Oh, the parting words of wisdom. I'm not really sure. Other than to say, what could I say? Other than to embrace that we are in an extreme time of change. There's a lot of unknownness about what jobs of the future looks like, what skills do we need to be a drone pilot. All of these huge questions are being asked. The beauty about being an entrepreneur is we get to decide our own future and fate. So think about, what is your most potent skill? What do you know the best? What are you most passionate about? And dig down and double down on that. And all of a sudden, there's the answer.
Yeah, and then do the research so that you know exactly what's happening in the industry, in technology, and where the problem is. Understand the problem clearly and profoundly, and then go forth with confidence, which is what you've done. And you've told that story very eloquently today. Thank you so much for
My
your time.
pleasure. Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Really love it.
We will see you next Thursday, 1 p.m. at the Smart Hub, HubLive. Please join us just after 1. We've been doing a bit of a pattern. We've been running late almost every week. But hopefully next week we will be back at 1 p.m. and we look forward to seeing you then. Goodbye from the Smart Hub.